Let's have a look into the legend of the Portuguese Triton. The Iberian Peninsula has been the home of many different groups and civilizations over the eras. Carthaginians, Iberians, Greeks, the populations we now call Celts, they all left their mark on the ethnic and cultural environment of the peninsula, coveted for its fertile lands, its mineral riches, and its climate. Over the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, there is a series of clashes between Rome and the political prospects of the individuals that already inhabited the Iberian Peninsula, including the area which is now Portugal. By the year 19 BC, the entirety of the peninsula was under Roman domain. The Romans called it Hispania. Authors from within the Roman world wrote about the Roman experience in this territory, their geographic and social knowledge, and also about local myths. One of the individuals who left us such a legacy was Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century of our era. Gaius Plinius Secundus, born circa 23 or 24 AD, wrote an encyclopedic work known as Naturalis Historia or Natural History, which attempted to provide information on matters such as geography, topography and local history, astronomical phenomena, botany and zoology, you name it. In essence, it was a fairly comprehensive Roman world encyclopedia. In that encyclopedia, Pliny tells a tale that regards what is now Portugal. If we open Book 9, Chapter 4, we can read the report of a delegation deliberately sent to Emperor Tiberius on behalf of the citizens of Olisipo, which is now Lisbon. The purpose of this delegation would be to report on a Triton seen and heard in a cavern blowing a conch. Furthermore, Pliny speaks of Nereids, similar to Tritons, though their human half is covered in scales. A Nereid would also have been seen in the vicinities of Olisipo and died along those shores. Tiberius reigned between the year 14 and the year 37 of our era, before Pliny completed his encyclopedia. If Pliny is correct, it seems there were legends in circulation across the Roman Empire about what is now the Portuguese coast. Greek and Roman myths inspired Portuguese authors during the early modern era, such as Luís de Camões, who makes several allusions to deities, Tritons and Nereids in his epic poem Os Lusíadas. In what regards the Triton in Lisbon, one of the most relevant writings comes from Damião de Góis, a scholar who lived in the 16th century. In his description of Lisbon, first published in Latin in the year 1554, Damião de Góis specifically mentions Sintra and its mountains, the region of Colares, and the beaches that surround what is now the natural park of Sintra Cascais. He says that not too far from the village of Colares, beneath a rock close to the sea, there was a cave, which was often filled with ocean water, and the collapsing waves and foams within the cave would provoke such loud noises that many believed the Triton would once have been seen there with his conch. In this, Damião de Góis presents a scientific explanation for the Triton near Lisbon. Yet right after this explanation, he returns to the mythological realms. He retells the story written by Pliny and adds that even to this day, across several places along the shore, a species of men would be found whom the people of those places would call seamen, due to their nature and origin, especially because they presented and preserved on the surface of their skin certain rugosities and scales scattered across almost the entire body, as if they were remnants of their old kind. These are his words. It appears here that Damião de Góis may be speaking of maritime creatures, though it is not entirely clear which they may be. This scholar says that the presence of these seamen was likely due to the past visit of Tritons, who would have come to the coastland lured by its sweet fruits and became ensnared by the locals. In captivity, Tritons would have been introduced to a new lifestyle and from thence perhaps proliferated their species with the humankind. In fact, Damião de Góis describes Tritons as creatures capable of human speech, and he tells a contemporary report of his own, where a Triton with long beard and hair, rather human-looking, would have been sighted near the Ermida de Santa Maria and fled back to the water once he spotted a fisherman. After this digression, Damião de Góis also mentions evidence from the royal archives of which he would be in charge. He speaks of an old contract celebrated between King Afonso III and Pai Pérez, Master of the Order of St. James. In this contract, there would be a tax over mermaids and other species caught along the beaches of Portugal. Let us not dwell now on the subtleties that distinguish mermaids and Nereids. We will only observe what Demian Goish concludes. One must obviously deduce, he says, that mermaids were then frequent in our waters, as there was a law regarding them. But enough of Tritons, Nereids, and mermaids. The myths surrounding Tritons and Nereids continue through the centuries, making their way to reports on the history of Lisbon, such as that by Luís Vedo, published in 1652. In 1721, they appear in the Portuguese and Latin vocabulary, a prototype for future dictionaries elaborated by Rafael Bluto. But the greatest revival of these myths happened perhaps during the Victorian era. Throughout the 19th century, many people were invested in neoclassicism. The interest in this ancient world grew, legends were dug up once more. The reports of Pliny the Elder were brought back into discussion, and often into questioning. Júlio de Castilho, who studied the history of Lisbon, calls Pliny a chronicler without criteria, in spite of his prodigious science, and includes the narrative surrounding the Triton among the mentions of absurd, more or less unlikely. Truth or myth, the Triton was ingrained in the Portuguese imagination, and in the second half of the 19th century, the king consort Ferdinand of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha had a Triton portico included in the decorations of his new palace, the Pina Palace.